All right. Well, good morning, ladies. I'm so excited to be here with you all this morning. As Erica just mentioned, I have three little kids, and recently we just went through the lovely process of potty training our middle kid. And for those of you maybe who have gone through that process before, there are a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and it can be somewhat daunting task. But this was our second time going around with this process. We've potty trained our first one, so this is our second time. And our middle kid wants to be just like his big brother and copy everything that he does. So I think overall it was easier, it was a little bit quicker of a process. But the difference between our oldest and our middle is that our middle kid is very independent and quite stubborn little kid. So overall, he picked it up quicker, but he was very adamant from the get-go that he knew exactly what he was doing, and he didn't need any help, that he would be able to potty train himself, go to the bathroom, and he did not want me to help him at all. And that's kind of how our middle kid is, his kind of way of operating. And I feel like that's most kids, especially little toddlers, where they are often determined to do things on their own. They don't want mom's help. They are stubborn often at times, and we try to correct that. But they think that they can do everything by themselves, and they're convinced that they're going to have success and it's going to go well for them. I mean, whether that's them thinking they can fully get dressed by themselves at like 1.5 or 2, or they know how to climb up in their car seat, they know how to buckle themselves in or unbuckle. I know my son tries to put his shoes on, tie his shoelaces, which he doesn't know how to do when we're always rushing out the door last minute and picking the wrong times to do all of that stuff. Or they think they know how to like pour themselves a cup of juice. The list can go on. But for some of those tasks, they are successful. I mean, my 2.5-year-old, he knows how to put on certain kinds of shoes, the slide-on ones. He doesn't know how to tie the shoelaces yet. And he knows how to climb up in his booster seat for mealtime, different things. But I'm sure I'm not the only one whose kid doesn't know how to fill up his own water bottle, or who doesn't know how to pour himself a cup of juice. I imagine that you can picture this lovely, lovely scene on a fill in the blank midweek morning, where he quickly dumps the juice all over the ground and all over the floor. And it's very apparent that he has no idea what he's doing. And it would have been better if he had just asked for my help that I offered, right? He would have had complete success if he recognized his need for help and he asked me for it. I was willing and able to, but they're stubborn, they try to be independent, and he didn't have success because he didn't recognize his need for it and then following through on it. And I think as moms, we often can fall into this same kind of pattern because within motherhood, there's so much joy and there's so much fun with our little ones, but we're also filled with a lot of unknowns. We're filled with a lot, even hardships at times. In the same way as that little toddler who is trying to be self-reliant and do everything on their own, and for a toddler, it very quickly and obviously backfires for them, we too often can set ourselves up for more difficulty, and even at times we can set ourselves up for failure when we neglect utilizing the relationships we have, or we live in isolation and we neglect pursuing any community or any friendship. Erica taught last week talking about how God created and designed us, and he designed us in a specific way to need people around us, to need community, and ultimately to need friendship. I mean, we see this all throughout the Bible, that God designed us in a way to be in community, to need others, and to not live in isolation. God himself is a relational God who desires ultimately a relationship with us, but he also designed us in a way where we are relational human beings, and that's his good design. So for the first point here this morning, as we dig into a mom's need for friendship and looking at how we practically go about that, we first need to understand God's good design of friendship, recognizing that this was his design, and it's a very good way that he designed it to be. We see this good design even at the very beginning of the Bible, where throughout the first 2 chapters of the Bible, God is creating the world out of nothing. And each day he looks at his creation and he says that his creation is good and he is pleased with it. Yet then we see he makes Adam, he makes man in Genesis 2:18. And it says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him.'" So God had made Adam and recognized that it was not a good thing for Adam to be alone. So he makes Eve, who was a helper and a companion for him, knowing it wouldn't be good for Adam to just be with all the creatures around him, but he needed companionship and he needed to not be alone and in isolation. So we see even this necessity affirmed in the world. I mean, we see it all throughout the Bible, but even in the world, there are so many studies that point to the mental, to the physical, and even emotional benefits that we get from friendship and from community. As I mentioned, there's so many studies, but one of them that I thought was helpful was from the Biopsychosocial Science and Study Medicine in 1990. And it did a study specifically on women that were presented with some kind of hard task to accomplish. And it showed that those who performed a task alongside others had a significantly lower heart rate reactivity. So it showed that not only were the tasks physically just easier, I mean, if you have other manpower, you have other brains working alongside, it's helpful, but it also showed, especially for women, that we are way less stressed and we are often way less overwhelmed when we have others that we're able to do this kind of hard task with, because we're not left to just our own vices trying to figure it out on our own. If you think back even to the pandemic that was 5 years ago, there were so many reasons that was a difficult time. But one of them was that we couldn't socialize with each other. And for someone like me, I'm more extroverted. I just love being around people. It was torturous. I mean, for me, my husband was working. He was cooped up in isolation, and I was pregnant with our first. So I didn't even have the little voices to kind of talk to, so I feel like I found myself just talking to myself at home. But I didn't have people to talk with, and it was really difficult to not be having that community and trying to make do with what you can with Zoom or whatever it might have been. But it was really hard to be in isolation. But I know maybe not everyone is loving to be around people, or maybe you're just more introverted, you're more shy. Maybe you don't like getting out of the house much and you kind of prefer being in your safe little space, kind of a little protective zone. Or for some of you, maybe you are more extroverted, but you've been really hurt by relationships in the past. Maybe you've experienced a lot of pain from friendships, pain from hurt that people have caused, and even friendships that have fallen apart and have been broken. And maybe that makes you a little more hesitant to open up to people. Maybe it makes you hesitant to get to a deep level with friendships, so maybe it becomes a little bit more surface level, or maybe it's just not as frequent because that pain that you've experienced is causing some hesitation. I think it's important, as we are talking about a mom's need for friendship, that it's important for us to recognize that while God's design is very good, we are all fallen and sinful people. And inevitably, not saying it's a good thing, but inevitably we are going to let each other down. So as we're looking at friendship, we have to realize we can't expect perfection from these friendships, because we all are fallen people who will let each other down. But I do think if we're pursuing friendship the way that God designed us to, and in a good way with characteristics that we are trying to emulate, then I think we will have more success in our friendships, and then we're also going to reap those benefits. I mean, as I mentioned, that study of the benefits, even from the mental, physical, and emotional, we're going to have a lot more benefits that we're receiving when we are pursuing friendship the right way. Another book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes 4, it's written by King Solomon, who's said to be the wisest man. It talks about here in these couple verses the benefit of friendship. Starting here in verse 9, it says that two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So we see here in verse 9 that it's much better for us to have others around us and to not be in isolation. Verse 10 says that if one falls, they have the help of another. So there's even that kind of logistical standpoint of when you have others alongside of you, you just have even physical help, having people that you're able to do things with. I mean, life in general, but especially motherhood in this season or journey that we are all in, it is so much sweeter. And honestly, it's way, way less daunting and overwhelming when we have others that we can do it alongside of. Even the study I mentioned, those hard tasks are a lot less difficult, and we respond in a much more positive way when we know that we're not doing it alone. I can assume, and I know this is week 2 here of Navigating Motherhood, but I can assume that even you showing up here and being a part of Navigating Motherhood, whether it's your first year or maybe you've been able to come for the past year or even 2 years, I assume that that means that you want to have a community, whether you want to build a new community or even just deepen relationships. Whether it's relationships you've already made in this room, which is awesome, or maybe it's just developing new ones as well. It's such an awesome opportunity that you're able to be around other moms who are in the trenches with you, who are going alongside the same thing. So that's a really, really great place to start, even just being here. But we do need to recognize that while being here is a really good start, there's still effort that we have to be putting in order to either develop new relationships or to deepen the relationships that we have. So I do pray that after this morning, you would hopefully leave with some practical applications, some nuggets that you can kind of start to apply and implement, and then hopefully be able to see some growth even in relationships you have, or maybe possibly building some new ones. But I do think a temptation that I think anyone can fall into when it comes to friendship is that we can quickly make, even in just our mind, hopefully we don't have it written out, but this long laundry list of expectations that we have for our friends. It might even just be in our mind. Maybe it's not something that we're dwelling on all the time. It might be in the back of our mind. But I do think we often are tempted with all the expectations, all the things that we would want in our friends. And I do think there are things that we should be looking for in our friends, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first, before we start pointing the magnifying glass at other people, we kind of need to point that at ourselves and do some self-examination and start identifying, how am I as a friend? And ultimately, we need to start modeling and emulating the qualities that we desire to have in other people. So for point number 2, we need to be actively working at being a good friend, actively work at being a good friend. It would be very hypocritical of us to have this rolling list of expectations for other people if we ourselves are not pursuing being a good friend to other people, if we aren't emulating those qualities that we would want in our own friends. I'd love to quickly work through this passage. I know it's a long one. It'll be on the screen. We'll kind of jump around. But here in Romans 12, 9 through 18, we see a lot of characteristics that God commands from his children to emulate. And I think that there are great qualities that we should be emulating if we're seeking to have good friends and have long-lasting friendships with other people. So starting here in verse 9, it says, "Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil and hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection." Okay, so first one we see is to love other people, which I imagine is probably kind of an obvious one, that if we want to have friends, we need to be loving other people. But I think we see here it talks about with genuineness and with brotherly affection, where when we have friends, we have a deep care for other people and we're doing good to them. We're being kind to them. I think also we would be listening to them. We would be preferring them above ourselves if we truly love and care for them. And we would also be a loyal friend to them. I think it's important how it says genuineness that's described there. So when we're kind to people, are we just kind of kind in that conversation? Are we even presenting ourselves in kind of a fake way where maybe to their face we're being kind, but our thoughts of them aren't really reflecting how we're talking to them? Also, when we're having conversations with them, are we genuinely engaged, or are we kind of like checked out of the conversation? We're like, I kind of am listening to what you're saying, but like kind of not. Is it with that genuine intention of, I care about what this person says, I'm preferring them above myself and maybe what I'm thinking or what I want to say, where I'm actively engaged and listening to them and preferring them? That brotherly affection shows that preference where I prefer their needs and their desires above even my own. And it's with that selflessness that I'm not expecting all these things in return, where if I truly, with brotherly affection, care on a deep level for that person, then I'm going to be caring about their needs and their desires. That doesn't mean that we don't have our own, but my first top of mind point of view is not, okay, well, what do I want? Or if I'm doing this for someone, then what are they going to be doing in return for me? Okay, continuing in the passage, we see it says, outdo one another in showing honor. So that honor where we value them and we respect our friends both to their face, but also behind their back as well. When we think about how we are talking about our friends, what does that look like? Maybe if we're talking to another friend or we're talking to our spouse or whoever it might be, how do we speak of our friends? Do we complain about them? Maybe frustrations that we might have or little annoyances? Are we sharing that with other people? Are we gossiping or complaining? Or maybe our friend shared something in confidence. Are we honoring and valuing them to keep that to ourselves? Or are we having loose lips and sharing things that they shared in confidence with us? I think also in the area of honoring and valuing them is, do we honor them with our commitments? I think that's a big one, especially as moms. When we say, I'm going to be here this time in this place, do we follow through on that? Do we show them that honor and be faithful to the things that we're telling them to do? Now, obviously, as moms, especially, things inevitably come up. I mean, schedules are all over the place, kids get sick. There are times, obviously, things will come up that we could not plan for. But in a general sense, when we are saying, oh, I'll follow up with you, or I'll let you know, or I'll be there at that time, do we follow through on them and honor and respect them in that way of keeping to our commitments? Okay, jumping to verse 15, we see rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. So are we wholeheartedly pleased, and are we also rejoicing with our friends when they're rejoicing? When they are having good news and good things happen to them, are we genuinely happy for them? Or do we have maybe some ounce of jealousy or even bitterness that's taking place because maybe we're not experiencing the same thing? And then on the flip side, when they're weeping or when they're grieving, they're saddened by things, does that actually affect us? When they're sad, are we burdened? And does it affect even our heart, knowing that our close friend is going through something difficult? We should be a constant for our friends, a friend at all times, whether it's the ups or the downs, the highs and the lows. We should be a faithful friend that is with them through it all. Okay, continuing, we see live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Okay, so we see here it's talking about being in harmony with one another, so being a peaceable friend, being at peace with one another. I think it'd be helpful for us to evaluate, are we an argumentative person? Do we hold grudges for long periods of time with our friends? We see that we should be at peace with one another and overlook things as often as we can. Now, of course, I want to give a caveat. There definitely are times where things have to be addressed and we need to confront and work through issues, resolve things with friends. But I do think more often than not, if we just assumed the best in our friends, if we gave them the best assumption that they didn't mean that, that wasn't their intention, those small little things that ultimately don't matter, if we just overlooked that, and gave them the benefit of the doubt, we would avoid so much conflict if we had just given them the benefit of the doubt. Now, also list not being wise in your own sight. Do we always think that our way is best? I mean, if you think about it, even within motherhood, there's a million ways that we can parent, whether you're maybe a stay-at-home mom, maybe you're a working mom, maybe you're a homeschool mom, or you send your kids to school, what you do as a mom with your free time, maybe the sports you put your kids in, the extracurriculars. There's so many options that we all have, and we all kind of do it a little different. Maybe some of you do it the exact same way, but there's always going to be a little bit of difference there. So when we're talking to our friends, are we talking in a way that's kind of demanding my way or the highway, where I'm doing it the best way? And then I think that can quickly bleed into starting to judge other people who maybe just do it even a little bit differently, or maybe they do it really differently than you. But does it lead into that judgment of even thinking less of that person and thinking, my way's the best way, and I'm demanding it, and I'm even talking and communicating in a way to my friends that they're doing it wrong, and I'm the one that's doing it the right way? Again, we would avoid a lot of conflict. We would avoid a lot of judgment, gossip. I mean, fill in the blank. If we were not wise in our own sight and being set that our way is the best way and it's my way or the highway. Now, I know that's a lot of examples in that passage, but I think if we bottle it down even just to a few characteristics, it would be helpful for us to evaluate if we are emulating being a friend that loves, being a friend that is faithful, and then being a friend that's a peacemaker. So being a friend that loves, a friend that is faithful, and then a friend that is a peacemaker. Those would be really great 3 qualities to start emulating and even evaluating if you are showcasing that in your current relationships. our friendships would be so much more beneficial, and also they would be way more long lasting. They wouldn't be even for a short period of time and kind of fizzle out, or that conflict that we experience that maybe causes division and separation of friends. We would be able to eliminate maybe not all of that, but we would have a lot more success if we were pursuing those qualities. But as we know, friendship is a two-way street. It's not just us who is doing all these things. There is another person or people involved. So while it's imperative that we are emulating those qualities, we also need to be very wise in who we are pursuing our friendships with. So for point number 3, we need to wisely choose your friends. Wisely choose your friends. As you know, here in Orange County, we live in a really populated area with a lot of young families and a lot of moms that were around. Even here at Navigating Motherhood, you're around a lot of other moms. And if your kid does sports or if they do school, you're probably just around moms a lot of time during the day. So we have a lot of opportunity to be around other people who are in our same season, even our same exact stage of life. But we realize we don't have the capacity to be friends with like 50 people all at the same time, even though we're probably around a lot of moms. No one has the capacity to have that many friends. And if they are, they're not going to last long, or they're not going to be very deep. But as we know, friendship does take time and energy, and often time and energy are just a little limited when you're raising kids, right? Because this season of motherhood is difficult, and there are a lot of unknowns that we come across. But if we do view friendship as a huge benefit and even view it as a necessity, then we're going to be pursuing friendship and be willing even to make some sacrifices to make that happen. We need to be very intentional with the relationships. If we recognize that our time is limited and we don't have just 20 hours out of the week to be investing in friendships, then we're going to be very intentional. Okay, I have this little pocket of time. I should be very thoughtful and wise in who I'm giving my time to. As we know, with friendship, it can quickly start to rub off on us, right? The people that we are around start to have an effect on us. I saw it very evidently play out in my own life when I was in college. I grew up here in Orange County, and I went to college out in Kentucky. And Kentucky is a very different culture, and it's a very different environment. And most of my friends that I made out in college had grown up in the South or the Midwest. I think I was probably the only girl from California at my college. It was a small Bible school. But I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb on my dorm hall because they said I talked with a Californian accent, which I don't think exists, but that's what they said to me. And I wore different brands of clothes. I wore different shoes. I was used to wearing sandals, every single day. So I didn't know what snow gear was. And I did not really know how to successfully drive in the rain when I was hydroplaning during a thunderstorm. And I never had driven in the snow before. So there were a lot of things that made it very clear that I was different than them, and I got a lot of laughs on their side. But over time, I started noticing that I was doing things that was kind of similar to what they were doing. I started listening to country music, which I don't know how you guys feel about country music. But I did not listen to country music growing up here, and that just became something I would quickly just put on Spotify without even thinking about it. And I started going on hikes in the mountains with my friends, which I am not a hiker in any sense of the word. I still am shocked that I did that. But I would go out in the nature, get my mosquito bites and all of that, and go on hikes with my friends. And I didn't really think about it. That's what they did. So I went along with it, and I wanted to hang out with them. My vocabulary even started changing, where I started using y'all probably every other sentence. I mean, I didn't even realize how quickly I started having a tang in my voice, not even trying to sound Southern, but just being around all those accents all the time. I started saying words alongside of them using y'all. And it was not something that I even realized. My husband and I, we went to the same college together. We started dating in high school, went out there together. And he started doing the same thing. And it wasn't until I probably did a little bit more than him, to be honest. But when we came back for summer breaks or for winter breaks, my friends here in Orange County were like, "Who are you? You don't sound the same. Why? I saw on your Instagram that you were hiking in the mountains. Like, what happened to you?" Like, I'm not really a outdoorsy kind of girl, especially hiking and mountains and bug bites and all of that stuff. So they were very confused, and they were like, what happened to our friend? You aren't the same. And those subtle changes weren't even really something that I started to identify until someone pointed it out to me. Now, those things, starting to like country music or going on hikes, depending on where you stand on those things, they're not really bad changes, right? They're not having any true negative effect on me. But it was kind of alarming in one sense that I didn't even realize that I was talking different. I didn't even realize that my activities had changed until someone pointed it out to me. You see, our friends can have a significant impact on our life, and it can be a great influence where our friends are pushing us to do good things, but it also can be in a very detrimental way where we're being pushed in a negative way. And there's a lot of harmful ramifications that can come from that. We see in Proverbs 13:20, it says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." So we see that there can be great harm when we surround ourselves with the wrong kind of friends. And I'm sure it goes without saying that we want friendship for our kids. We see the benefit and we see the joy that it brings our kid. I mean, my oldest son, he just started TK this year, and I love hearing about all of his friends. I pick him up from the carpool line, and he's listing off all of his friends, what he did. His teacher posts pictures of what they're doing throughout the day, and I love that. He has so much joy on his face talking about his friends and what he's been doing. But I don't want my kid to be friends with just anyone. I mean, I don't really know who like the bad kid is in his class yet. So far, they all seem very sweet, but we'll see. But I don't want him to be friends with the wrong kind of people, right? Because I don't want my kid to be exposed to things that I wouldn't want him exposed to. I don't want him to start acting in a way that I wouldn't want him to act, or start saying things that I wouldn't want him to say. And I think many of us can lean towards kind of being more the protective mom, trying to kind of monitor our kids and keeping a vigilant eye over who our kids are friends with. We should and we ought to have that same kind of vigilance when we're looking at our own friendship. Monitoring, who am I keeping close to me? What are they like? What am I being exposed to? What am I being influenced to by those that I'm choosing to keep close to me? It'd be very helpful for us to kind of step back and just evaluate, one, if you have close friends, do you lean towards the isolation, or do you have close friends? And then two, who are they and how would you describe your friends? And maybe don't share that with other people in a gossipy way, but just to yourself, even evaluate, what are my friends like? What are ways that I would describe that person? As I pray that we would be aiming for good and godly qualities that we talked about, point number 2, I think that we can use that same criteria as we think through our friends. Are they a loving friend? Are they a faithful friend? And are they a peacemaking friend? And if you step back and realize that maybe you don't have close friendships, and maybe you are tempted to isolate, maybe you are more shy, or maybe you've experienced some pain in the past, then a great takeaway would be to start investing in building some relationships. Remember that great benefit that can come from it, and don't allow that hurt maybe that you've even experienced in the past keep you from making new relationships. Or maybe for some of you, you do have closer friends, but maybe they're not the best influence. You wouldn't really describe them with those qualities. Then it would be good to use kind of what we talked about, that limited time where we usually just have small pockets of time. It'd be very wise to use that small amount of time and invest it into some better relationships. But that doesn't mean, okay, we just want to like rudely just, bye, like sayonara, you're out of my life. Like we don't want to be rude about how we're going about it, but maybe it means, okay, I need to be cutting back on some time with that person. And that time that I'm kind of taking away, I'm going to be investing that into some better relationships, ones that are going to be a better influence on me, and I'm going to have more success even in them. But I'm sure that sounds nice in an ideal world of, okay, well, if I had unlimited time with no kids, no distractions, that would be fine and dandy. But how do I do that with the season of life that I'm in? I think one great start is even looking at the people around you. I mean, here at Navigating Motherhood, maybe your kids are at school or maybe they're being watched down there. You have a great opportunity, if you have signed up and you're committed to being here every Tuesday, to have an opportunity to be alongside other moms and utilize this time to start building those relationships, or even deepening them if you've already made some relationships here. Maybe you've made relationships here, you have relationships elsewhere. I think two important things as we try to build and deepen those relationships is we need to be creative, and we also need to be flexible of how we're going about trying to have that time, being creative and flexible. Because friendship does take time to start, but friendship also takes time to keep it. So we need to be very creative with how we spend time with our friends. Now, it might be easier for some of you, depending on your life stage, to do maybe walks with your kids or do play dates if they're not in school, so utilizing more of that daytime. Or maybe you have kids that are all at school, maybe you aren't working and you have some free time during the day, even utilizing some of that time to get together with friends when your kids are off at school. Or maybe you're a working mom, part-time or maybe even full-time, but you might need to sacrifice even a night to yourself, maybe some me time, and using that time, maybe after the kids are down for bed or on the weekend, if your maybe husband is off on the weekend, sacrificing even some of that me time to go out on a late night and go to dessert, or to go for an early morning breakfast on a Saturday morning. It takes intentionality, creativity, and also takes flexibility. Now, for some of you, you might be the taxi mom driver who's never out of their car, who's driving them here to there for sports, pickups, extracurriculars, everything. It might mean, okay, I need to utilize those times that I'm in the car line and I need to be on the phone or having just more communication through calls or Marco Poloing a friend, whatever it might be, utilizing even the technology that we have to keep in touch and keep up to date with our friends. Now, for me personally, I have friendships that are kind of all in different seasons. So for one of them, I have a friend that doesn't have kids. So often it's, okay, put the kids down, my husband will be at home, and we'll go out to dessert at like 9 p.m. Or she'll come over after my kids are asleep and she'll come and hang. My kids are put to bed, so trying to utilize that time. I have another friend that we both have little toddlers that we Marco Polo, if you have that app or whatever, but we use that every single day to communicate because we both have kids with that we're going here to here, and we don't often have every single week to get together. So trying to have constant communication where I know what she's going through, she knows what I'm going through, and we're able to have that deepening of our relationship. It'll probably look different depending even your own season of life and your friend as well. So it's going to take that creativity of, okay, how can I intentionally find pockets of time? It might look different even depending the month of the year, but trying to even intentionally be flexible and creative with how can I make that time work. But if we truly do see friendship as a benefit and even a necessity, then we're going to be willing to make those sacrifices. Because there is a great return of investment that we even see when we have friendships with those difficulties that we are trying to navigate. If we're not that toddler who's trying to pour the juice by themselves and not having success in that, we have others that we can lean on in friendship, and there's great benefits from that. We're able to rejoice with our friends through the joyful times. We're also able to be with them there through the difficult times. And it does take sacrifice and effort, but we're going to reap those great benefits if we give that intentionality and that time allotted into our friends. As we talked about at the beginning, God designed us as relational human beings that need other people. And he made us even with different personalities. We all have different strengths, we have different weaknesses, we have different ways of thinking, we've had different walks of life, and we're able to complement each other as friends even with our differences, and that's such a great thing, where we're able to help someone when they're maybe not skilled in that area, maybe we are, and vice versa. We're able to give our friend a helpful perspective. Maybe we can even alleviate some logistical burdens from our friends where we're able to complement each other. Because we all need friendship and we're not self-sufficient, even as that toddler who thinks that maybe they are. But God designed us for friendship, and he desires for us to be in community. But most importantly, God designed us to be in a relationship with him. I mean, our sheer existence is dependent on God, who uniquely designed and created us. God is the one who's giving us breath in our lungs, and he desires for us to have a relationship with him. Now, while friendship is a huge blessing and definitely something that we should be pursuing actively and start emulating those qualities, his ultimate desire is for us to have a relationship with him. And without God, we're not going to have joy. We're not going to have hope and even lasting success in these areas. We talked about earlier that we inevitably are going to let each other down. We're all sinful and we're all fallen. We're not perfect. So we are going to let each other down. While we have sinned maybe in the past against our friends, or we will in the future, first and foremost, we have to recognize that we have sinned vertically against God. We have against other people horizontally, but the first and foremost thing we need to recognize is that we have fallen short and we have sinned vertically against God. God is a just God, and he can't be in the presence of sin and just overlook sin. He has to execute his justice. And because of our own sin, we fall short of his holy and perfect standard. And he can't just turn a blind eye to that. Yet God is also a loving God who sent his perfect son to live a perfect life, which none of us can live. And he died on the cross that we, because of our sin, were deserving of. He took the wrath of God for our sake. And his death and resurrection gives us that ability to have that vertical relationship with him. Where if we respond to the gospel, it talks about in the Bible with repentance and faith, where we recognize our fallenness before him, that we're deserving of his just punishment. We turn to live a life for him, trusting in him and his life and his death and his resurrection. And we give him that control. That's his ultimate design, is for us to have a relationship with him. And these additional relationships are such a blessing. But I would encourage you here, even the start of navigating motherhood, to consider those things this morning. That while we're talking about the importance of friendship and the benefits that there are, I want us also to consider that vertical relationship. And then after that, start looking at the horizontal relationships of how we can go about pursuing good horizontal relationships, both in developing new ones, but also in deepening new ones. So I hope that you guys have a good discussion as you look through the questions here with your table leaders and start thinking through those qualities that we can start pursuing, but then ones that we can also be looking for in our friends. So I pray it's a good discussion. Thank you guys.